Now, in this final portion of this particular unit, I want to talk about conversion between the two different units we use to measure temperature. So we're talking about temperature. And of course, in the US standard units, we use degrees Fahrenheit, while in pretty much every other part of the world, they use degrees Celsius or centigrade. Real quick, let's talk about units and the amount of degrees at each of these at which water freezes and at which water boils. Water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit and it boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. It freezes at 0 degrees Celsius and it boils at 100 degrees Celsius. So what I'm going to do in this particular unit is I'm going to show you how to correlate these two different units. In other words, if I'm given Fahrenheit, how can I figure out Celsius? If I'm given Celsius, how can I determine Fahrenheit? And the key is remembering these four values: 212, 100, 0, and 32. Okay? So ultimately what I want to do is correlate degrees Fahrenheit to degrees Celsius. So how can I get one of these two if given the other? So what we're going to do first is we're just going to plug in the values we have. So Fahrenheit, we have 32 degrees. We're trying to correlate that to 0. Hopefully you see that 0 degrees does not equal 32. So we need to do something so that this side of the equation equals this side. So we're going to start by adding 32. So now both sides of the equation equal 32. I hope that everybody can at least see that. Now the question is this true in all instances? In other words, if I put in any value for Celsius, when I add it to 32, will it give me the same degrees Fahrenheit? So that's where we're going to use our boiling temperature. So if I have 212, I have 100 plus 32, do both sides equal? And the answer is no. 100 plus 32 gives me 132, which is not equal to 212. So this tells me that currently my equation is not finished. So now I have to figure out what else I can add to this equation to give me the correct answer on both sides, or equal answers and values on both sides. Well, I can't add or subtract anything else, because if I do that, then when I'm at 0, it's going to give me something other than what I'm expecting to see for Fahrenheit. In other words, if I add one more degree here, it's going to make this 33. And then if I add 33 to 0, it's going to give me 33 degrees, not 32. So instead, if I can't add or subtract anything, maybe I can multiply. Maybe I have a coefficient in front of my degrees Celsius that will then give me the correct answer in terms of my degrees in Fahrenheit. So that that particular factor, I'm going to represent as x. Okay? So that coefficient will be x. So now all I have to do is use some algebra and solve for x. So x is multiplied by 100 right now, so I can't get rid of that 100. So instead what I'll do is I'll subtract 32 from both sides. When I do that, that goes to 0. This side is going to go to 180 equals x times 100. And now what I do to solve for x is I divide by 100 on both sides. Okay? And that gives me that x equals 180 over 100. Now, that's a tricky, improper fraction to work with. So I need to simplify it a little bit so that it looks cleaner. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to determine is what can I divide into both the numerator and the denominator to simplify this? Well, both of these end in 0, and that tells me something. That tells me that this is basically the same thing as 18 over 10 times 10 over 10. So I can divide by 10 over 10, and that gives me 18 over 10. All right, so now I can't divide by 10 again, because that'd give me 1.8 in my numerator. I don't want that. I want whole numbers. But I notice that both of these are even, so I can divide by 2. So I divide by 2 over 2, and after I divide, 18 divided by 2 is 9, 10 divided by 2 is 5. So my end result is that I find that x equals 9 over 5. Now, what do I do with this? Well, I go back into my original equation, and I'm going to substitute that value in for x. So my final equation here is going to be Fahrenheit equals 9/5 C plus 32. Now, a couple of things to note. First and foremost, this 9/5 is multiplied by C and C only, because there are no parentheses surrounding the C plus the 32. Okay? So that means this 9/5 only applies to my degrees Celsius. It does not apply to that 32. All right, so this equation here that I currently have is what I use if I'm given my initial number is in degrees Celsius. So I use this equation if I'm given degrees Celsius. Now I want to convert this to an equation I can use if I'm given degrees Fahrenheit. So similar to what I did to solve for x, now I'm going to solve for C, because this one's currently saying, what does F equal if C equals something else? I want it to be saying, what does C equal if F equals something else? So I'm going to solve for C. So I'm going to start similar to the way I started with x, by subtracting 32, because 9/5 is multiplied by C. And I can't divide or do anything with that at this point in time until I get rid of this 32. So I'm going to subtract 32 from both sides, which gives me F minus 32 equals 9/5 C. Now, all I need to do is get this 9/5 out of here and onto this side. Anytime you're dealing with a fraction, to get rid of it on one side, or at least to simplify it on one side, you're going to multiply by its reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by 5/9 on both sides. Okay? Now, because this side of the equation was F minus 32, I have to put that in parentheses when I'm multiplying by 5/9, because that 5/9 is not only multiplied by the degrees Fahrenheit, it's also multiplied by that minus 32. So 5 over 5 is 1. 9 over 9 is 1. So now what I have is 1 times C, which gives me a final formula of degrees Celsius equals 5/9 times F minus 32. So, what this tells me is that I can use this formula if I'm given degrees Fahrenheit. So if I start with Fahrenheit, I can use this formula to calculate Celsius. If I'm given Celsius, I can use this formula to calculate Fahrenheit. So those are the two formulas. That's how the formulas were derived. That's how we get both of those formulas. And these are the formulas you should use if ever given any kind of temperature measurement that you need to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius or from Celsius to Fahrenheit. Okay? And all you have to do then is plug in. So let's say that I started with degrees Fahrenheit equals 113. Okay, so I started with degrees Fahrenheit, which tells me I'm going to use this formula. So C equals 5/9 times 113 minus 32. Okay. 113 minus 32 gives me 81. C equals 5/9 times 81. 81 can be rewritten, so this will equal 5/9 times 9 times 9 over 1. 9 divided by 9 is 1, which then gives me C equals 5 times 1 times 9 over 1 times 1, which gives me 45 over 1, which gives me 45 degrees. So 45 degrees Celsius. All right. Let's say that I instead started with degrees Celsius equals 20. Okay, so I'm given Celsius, so I'm going to use this formula. It's going to be F equals 9/5 times 20 plus 32. So I'm solving for Fahrenheit. 20 can be rewritten. 9 over 5 times 4 times 5 over 1 plus 32. 5 over 5 is 1, which then gives me Fahrenheit equals 9 times 4 times 1 over 1 times 1 plus 32, which gives me 36 over 1 plus 32, which gives me 36 plus 32, which gives me 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's all there is to it.